Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlegger shills, escalators, peasants, vassals, spy masters. I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to talk about Israel and their connection to this whole NSA scandal, which is rather huge. In fact, one might suggest that the NSA is just another bitch for Israel, but I'm not one to characterize it like that. So anyway, I started focusing on a company called Amdocs because a friend of mine brought it up, and she actually works for a subsidiary of this company, and it turned out to be a real eye-opener. And then when I started doing research, the connections with all these other Israeli companies, and a history that goes back quite a bit. And a lot of this history I've been familiar with, but it's become all the more relevant now with all this NSA scandal going on. And there's a vast amount of information on this, and I'm only going to be scratching the surface. So I encourage anyone who finds this topic interesting or is skeptical of the details, look at more of the information that I will attach below as usual. And but that said, it's still going to be a fairly lengthy video and covering some interesting ground. So let's get down to this nefarious connection between Israel and spying in America. And the company Amdocs is one of Israel's largest companies. Its clients include America's top 25 phone companies. And they have traditional clients that include a lot of companies that we've been hearing a lot about lately that have been working with the NSA. And that includes AT&T, the BT Group, Sprint, T-Mobile, Vodafone, TELUS, Bell Canada, Comcast, DirecTV, Verizon, Singular, and T-Mobile. So the fact is that while the NSA spies on us, Israel is spying on us at the same time. So we have the hunters hunting the hunted, and the hunted hunting the hunters globally in this spying surveillance network. And Amdocs handles 90% of the transactional call data on all U.S. telephone communications. Think about that for a minute. An Israeli company handles 90% of the transactional call data on all U.S. telephone communications. Data on billions of phone calls every day, including who calls whom and for how long. And this company is headquartered in Chesterfield, Missouri, and has over 20,000 employees. But half of those employees are in Israel, and their clients are spread over 50 countries. And even though they're based in Chesterfield, Missouri, they're registered in the island of Guernsey. So that gives them a certain amount of protection and anonymity, as well as being a good tax haven. And officially, Amdocs Limited is a provider of software and services for communications, media, and entertainment industry providers. The company develops, implements, and manages software and services for business support systems. Of course, interpreting that, when a company says it develops, implements, and manages this software, that's pretty loaded. That means they develop the surveillance technology, they install it into their equipment, and then they continue to manage it after it's installed. In fact, just like all the backdoor surveillance that the U.S. surveillance industry, NSA and FBI, and all the intelligence industries in the United States, law enforcement, all demand backdoor software built into American technology. Now it turns out that just as one would suspect, we're getting equipment and technology from Israel that's already got backdoors built in it so Israel can spy on us. That's probably the same with a lot of stuff that we get from China as well. But that's a topic for another video. The software systems support the customer lifecycle according to company material, revenue management, customer management, service and resource management, service delivery. And of course, that all sounds innocuous enough, but it turns out that this company grew very quickly in this explosion in the lucrative business of surveillance. The company was founded in 1982 as an offshoot of Golden Pages, the Israeli phone directory company, and then they became Arik Information. Then in 1985, Southwest Bell Corporation bought 50% share in the company, and they were changed their name to Amdocs. And then 2 years later, Amdocs was sold back to Israel. And then by the 2000s, Amdocs also had a consulting division, including working with banks, notoriously a Dutch bank, ABN AMRO, which is now, of course, engulfed in controversy itself. By 2009, Amdocs was ranked the leader in worldwide market share in telecommunications software management systems. So that's saying something, and no wonder we should be concerned about the connection with the NSA and surveillance globally and in the United States and Israel, because this Israeli company is now the worldwide leader in market share in telecommunications software and management systems. Like I said earlier, they handle 90% of the transactional call data in the U.S. alone. And then to make sure they consolidate their power, they've had massive acquisitions in the last 10 years globally. And this has only led them to concentrate their power even more. And they've acquired companies like Solec Technology Group, Nortel Networks, DST Systems, QPass, Stevo Graphic Software, Kramer Systems, Moria, Jacobs, Rimmel. So they've been busy making sure that they have access to all telecommunication in the United States, and they're working on global. And interestingly enough, in 1999, the NSA even warned our own government that information filtered through these Israeli companies was making it back to Israel. And that's not hard to trace that kind of information. And in fact, in 2005, this very same Israeli company, Amdocs, was investigated in Israel because its corporate managers were doing its manager was doing corporate espionage and using sophisticated software to infiltrate competitors' computers. And 19 people were arrested. So this shows you right off the bat that in spite of this company's claims to being a model of legality, they are involved in some nefarious activities. And they also were charged with spying on journalists who were investigating the company. So that's a practice we see in the United States, and we see it in Israel as well. So nothing much new under the sun. And as it turns out, even though this video is primarily on the company Amdocs, there's plenty of other Israeli companies that are involved in the same thing. And in fact, James Bamford, who is yet another NSA whistleblower that people don't remember, from 2007-2008. And he wrote a book called The Shadow Factory. And he talks about the AT&T surveillance rooms and everything that everyone's talking about now. But he also talks about a lot of Israeli companies. And that includes Amdocs, but it also includes a company called Verint, the world leader in electronic communications interception, and another Israeli company called Narus, and an even more interesting company called NICE Systems, who are doing detecting, locating, monitoring, evaluating, and analyzing voice communication, which is a fancy way of saying every step of wiretapping. And the other thing about these Israeli companies that include all the ones I've talked about is they're generally funded by Israel, and a lot of them are staffed by ex-Israeli and probably present Israeli intelligence people. And this company NICE was formed in 1986, and it was almost all veterans of Israeli surveillance, including a group called Unit 8200. And their specialty is word spotting, emotion detection, talking pattern analysis, and state-of-the-art visualization. And they're another company, just like Amdocs. They capture the voice, email, chat, screen activity, and all essential call details. So all of these companies are facilitating the NSA in their data collection and are certainly equally as guilty of everything we're talking about. And needless to say, it's pretty disturbing that we have the Israeli government, supposedly a friend of the United States, doing a vast amount of spying and surveilling on the United States. So all the material that's available to the NSA is also going back to Israel. And no wonder that they have such an interaction with our foreign policy. Of course, they're going to want to know what our government officials are talking about, and how our policies, what direction our policy is going in. And in fact, another whistleblower, a former CIA agent, Officer Giraldi, told us that another Israeli company called Verint Incorporated handles most of U.S. law enforcement wiretaps in this country. And he said that, quote, phone calls are intercepted, recorded, and transmitted to the U.S. by Verint. So they intercept the calls in Israel and then send them back to law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies in the U.S., of course, after they glean the material that they need. And Verint is just like all these other Israeli companies. Their research and development is 50% funded by the Israeli government. And they were actually called Converse Infosys. In 1999, they changed their name to Verint because they were under investigation in the U.S. And like I say, called out by various whistleblowers here in the United States. And one of the methods they use, interesting, was a term called, quote, remote maintenance, unquote. And that's where they build in this backdoor access technology. And then remote maintenance is where they use that technology in order to continue to have information flow from the United States back to Israel. A very good indication of how aware our government is of this is not only are people that question this connection between the NSA and the United States surveillance and Israeli companies, they're generally chastised and or fired or blackballed. And this is a common practice in the United States. As we know, all whistleblowers are persecuted. And so anyone who challenges this complicity of Israeli agencies in surveillance in the United States is immediately chastised. So that also brings up questions about where is the allegiance in our government? Is it to the United States or is it to Israel? And a very, very glaring example of that is the fact that when Bill Clinton was being investigated, he actually warned Monica Lewinsky to be careful about sex talk on phone lines because the phones in the White House were tapped by, quote, foreign embassies, unquote. So you can't get a more direct indictment of what is going on than that. And in fact, once again, in this book that I mentioned, The Shadow Factory, over 24 intelligence, counterintelligence, and law enforcement officials came forward in the year 2000. They said a daring operation by Israeli intelligence had intercepted telephone and modem communications on some of the most sensitive lines of the U.S. government on an ongoing basis. So not only is the Israeli government and Israeli corporations assisting the United States in spying on its own population and participating in that collection of data, but the Israelis, of course, are using that same apparatus to spy on our own very government. And so they know our secrets. And this has led to a lot of interesting things, like a whole bunch of Israeli agents, Mossad agents, that were stopped in New York. All sorts of suspicious activities, both before, during, and after the attacks on 9/11 and on the World Trade Center, 9/11, 2001. And not only did a lot of these Israelis have connections with these very companies, but it's fully documented that a lot of these companies were the ones who bailed out these Israeli agents and got them back to Israel. So, like I say, this is just scratching the surface. But this touches on a number of topics that I will be covering further in future videos. One is the fact that this illustrates that, like so many other countries, Israel is a very strange friend for the United States to have. And many, including myself, would characterize them as no friend of the United States at all. And second of all, this globalization has led to the fact that everybody is spying on everybody else, and all this information is available. And of course, this particular connection makes it that much easier for Israel to manipulate the foreign policy of the United States. And so anyway, so when you're thinking about pointing the finger at the NSA, when you think about pointing the finger at the last 4, 5, 6 administrations who have had everything to do with building up this surveillance state in the United States, there's not much new under the sun. But like I say, when you point the finger, we also have to look at supposedly America's friend, Israel, knee-deep in the shit with the NSA and spying on Americans. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too. And don't be a useful idiot for Israel.